Are our police too traumatised to deal with their lives? Just today, you heard in the news, it's alleged a police officer shot and killed his ex-wife and brother-in-law in court. He then turned the gun on himself in a suicide attempt. This isn't an unusual story in South Africa. Crime levels in the country are extremely high and law enforcement jobs are among the most stressful. But do our officers have the support they need to execute their jobs efficiently? And can we prevent the epidemic of police suicides that we are seeing? To help us through that, joining me tonight, Police and Prisons Civil Rights Union spokesperson Richard Mamabolo, and Fall Justice and Violence Consultant at the Institute for Security Studies, joins us via Skype. We'll eventually get to see him. Cassandra Govender, a psychologist from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, and Brigadier Petunia Lenono, Section Head of Psychological Services for the South African Police Service. Very warm welcome to all of you. Let me start off with you, Richard Mamabolo. Why is it so bad? What's going on?
Look, I think this is something that has been happening for many years. In fact, back in 2003, the SAPS recognized that there is a challenge with regards to what is called post-traumatic stress disorder. And since then, there has been an establishment of what you call employee assistance programs, which are obviously meant to ensure that because of the nature of the work that the police do, they can then get a debriefing and ensure that they then do not have the kind of stress that they do have now. What is currently worrying is that this is growing, it's a growing trend, and we've seen not only on the reported cases alone, there have been many cases over the years which obviously are growing, and that presents a challenge not only for police themselves, but for their colleagues, for their families as well, because we've seen a lot of people obviously ending up being killed, especially some of the family members of the relatives of police rather. So we think the problem has been the manner in which these employee assistance programs are being implemented. What we had raised was that, you know, even when you engage with normal police officers on the ground, what they raised has been that they lack confidentiality in that whatever information they disclose to those who they are supposed to be trusting tends to be leaked, tends to go to colleagues, you know, as well within
that's terrible, isn't it?
It is terrible.
So, I mean, I should imagine, see this on a daily basis in the work that you do. I mean, you've just highlighted so many issues there. How does that harm policemen who've come to you to express their despair?
I mean, the issue of confidentiality is a perception that the members have. However, we know that perception is what really drives human behavior. Yeah. Even though it is a perception, it's something that we are taking very seriously. And I can assure you, because the members who are dealing with employee health and wellness are registered psychologists, are registered social workers, are chaplains who belong to their own board. So all of us, we are professionals and we are bound by our professional ethics. So there's no way that we can really divulge an employee's personal information. What we have found happens is that the very same employee will go and tell the friends what the problem is. And that is where we have found that the information also gets leaked.
Not necessarily quite hard to mask anyway, to cover up what you're going through.
Yes.
In serious cases.
Yes, sure. And we understand why the employees may sometimes want to tell other people about their problems, even though they have sought assistance from the employee health and wellness professionals. So we really see a lot of that. But then to also mitigate that, because as I said, it is a perception, but then to mitigate that, we said that let us partner with our medical aid, which is mainly PolMed, to say that if you feel uncomfortable in any way to talk about your issues inside the organization, rather seek help outside. PolMed has a psychosocial network of professionals. They are registered with PolMed, and they can offer clinical psychology assistance, counseling, as well as trauma debriefing privately, that the employer does not have to know anything about. There's also the South African Depression and Anxiety Group that we see that our members are accessing on a daily basis.
Cassandra Govender, what are you seeing?
So I think, I mean, on that point to think about is that stigma is probably one of the things that actually contributes to this perception of confidentiality be broken. So this idea that our police officers need to be mentally well, I don't think is promoted as much as it should, because it isn't just about them personally, but public in general. If our police officers are not well, the knock-on effects of that are immense, as we saw today. I mean, if you're living with severe and chronic stress that you're not dealing with, it can lead to errors, accidents, overreactions, those kinds of things. So I think it's really important, but I do think there's barrier in general in accessing services because people are afraid or don't always want to talk about it. But it's this perception, whether real or founded, I think that is something we need to address. So creating this dialogue, talking about it, not just when there are incidents, but promoting it all year round about how important it is to, have police officers that are getting treatment, because in general their job is very stressful. So I think we shouldn't underestimate that fact. It's not just when an incident has happened that they should seek treatment or get advice, but in general.
Andrew Fall, tell us what you are seeing, what the police are going through, the stresses that they experience and why.
Sure. Well, this isn't a simple issue at all, and I think there's an angle to it that we're missing, which is that South Africa is just a very violent society. We are violent with each other and we are violent with ourselves. So police officers are facing many stresses. They are being exposed to and developing post-traumatic stress. In 2014-15, 10% of SAPS employees were treated for depression. And between 2012 and 2015, 26% of all officer deaths were as a result of suicide. At one stage, police officers in the SAPS were more likely to kill themselves than be killed by others. But I think...
sorry, Andrew, is this because of what they might see? If they get called out to, I don't know, a shooting, I mean, does that just add to the layers of this stress?
I think that might be part of it, but going back to the violent nature of South African society, police officers work with force. Force is a constant theme in the organization. There are the weapons, the tools of force. Firearms are ever present. Where a firearm is present, one is far more likely to inflict lethal force on another and on oneself. So I think it's very important to note that the court shooting today was in effect a domestic interpersonal revenge shooting by a police officer to his spouse. Last year, 11 SAPS officers were killed as a result of domestic violence, and 7 of those murders were at the hands of other police officers. So it's the fact that police officers are working and living with firearms, that potential for death, whether it is against another or against oneself, is ever present. And as a result, the stress that imbues so many lives in South Africa, the struggling to pay the bills, the struggling to support extended family members as a sole breadwinner, all of that piles up. And I think the fact that police live with and use force and have a lethal weapon around all the time leads to us seeing increased suicide.
Okay, thank you. Richard, is that something that needs to be addressed, taking your gun home?
Look, it's something that, of course, should be addressed, but we have seen in instances where police who are off duty have obviously assisted with some of the criminal activities that have been going on within our communities. But I think beyond the issue around post-traumatic stress disorder, you've got currently in South Africa a police force service of 191,000 members who have to look after 57 million people across the country. So they are really understaffed. They've got many other stresses, their finances obviously are really low. You've got challenges where the SAPS management, even at the top level, is highly bloated whilst the resources are needed on the ground. And of course the infrastructure.
I mean, excuse me jumping in, I was shocked to read that they only get paid something like 400 Rand if they get called out and it's a highly dangerous situation. I mean, that's clearly not enough either. What you call danger allowance is 400 currently, sitting at 400. It has not increased over the years. I have personally seen a lot of families whose parents, mothers or fathers have obviously been killed in the line of service. And the amount that they get, which is 200,000 Rand, has not been sufficient to even take the children to school. You remember that a majority of police who commit suicides are obviously under the age of 35. You would imagine they've got young kids, and all those have not
not have necessarily worked out for them. We think that we need to take two approaches. Firstly, obviously, deal with the issues around getting the employee assistance programs working. I mean, they've got good policies and plans, but it's the implementation that is letting them down. And then from then on, look into the entire structure of the SAPS to ensure that it is suited to address the levels of crime that we find in our country. And of course, one of the most important things is that communities need to play a bigger role in working with the police, because without communities, police cannot do it themselves.
Okay, what are your comments? I mean, you're saying to me that the infrastructure is in place, that these men, women have access to professional help. It's clearly not working, though. What do you think needs to change?
Working, I would put a question mark on that, even though I would say that it's not working the way it should. Because when we say that our programs are 100% effective, it is when we come to a situation where we have zero report on suicide rates in the service. So that is when we can say our programs are 100% effective. So until we get to that level, we cannot really stop working. We need to continuously work. And in the clusters, in the police stations, we do have employee health and wellness practitioners that are servicing the members, as well as in the head office. So our professionals are all over, and I concur that the issue of economic challenges, we have seen through our research that it's really impacting negatively on the well-being of our members, which is why...
Why is that not being addressed?
No, it is being addressed. We have partners. We have partnered with external stakeholders that come on a regular basis to offer financial assistance programs to our employees, because we do realize that some of our employees are over-indebted. But over and above that, we see the issue of substance abuse, where our employees, instead of dealing with their problems or mental challenges in a way that's acceptable, they'd rather go and abuse substances. And you can understand why, because SAPS is a semi-military organization, so it's very difficult, you know, for members, especially males, to come out and really acknowledge how they are feeling. And I don't think it is only a South African Police Service challenge, it's a national challenge where you find that men do not readily come out and seek help.
It is a problem. We've got a caller on the line from Pretoria. Benang, I believe you are a police officer. Go ahead, Benang.
Good evening, Jane. I want to say that the challenges that are faced by police should not be dealt with in isolation from what we are undergoing within the communities.
Okay, do you want to elaborate more?
Within the South African Police Service, members that are attached to high-risk units, it is mandatory for them to ensure that they subject themselves to debriefing.
Okay, let's pick up on that point then, Benang. Thank you. I think that's obviously a very important point.
Yes.
To talk through what you've experienced. Are you seeing that happening?
In terms of them presenting for debriefing, sorry, I couldn't quite hear that.
Yes, it was a bit disconnected. She was talking about, I think, the importance of community.
Yes.
And they don't go for debriefing when they should.
Right, so now I'm with you. So I think one point I do want to pick up and then link to this is the idea that was presented that we mustn't actually lose sight of the fact that this was also, in a sense, we're talking about crime in a broader sense. So how police officers not only exist in quite a dangerous environment, but how we as South Africans live in that, and gender-based violence in particular. So I think one thing to talk about around that is if you have a police officer living in chronic stress, the ability in which he's going to perpetrate or react quite quickly to something is going to be increased. So we want to talk about this idea that we have a culture of gender-based violence that's quite high, but that's going to be perpetuated with crime. So it's important then to link back to community, stigma, and debriefing. So we need to talk about, you know, debriefing in terms of chronic stress is going to push us in this direction. So we need to help our officers manage their stress so that because they have access to guns and because they are police, they can react, and when they are under stress, their reactions can impact us on society quite a lot more, I suppose. So it's important then that we do offer more debriefing, but talk about it, talk about the importance, make it normalized, you know. Have people coming in. And as society, I agree, it should be mandatory.
You might not choose to go that route. Andrew, also, I mean, It just shows you how desperate they are when, I mean, anybody who takes their life, but knowing that possibly your family is not going to get a penny from the police force as well if you do commit suicide. Does that need to be changed?
I'm not sure what the SAP's policy is on it, but yeah, that is something to keep in mind. I suppose one isn't necessarily thinking entirely rationally when one does this kind of thing. I just want to clarify a few points in terms of chronic stress and income. Of course, the SAP's officers do struggle financially. Employee health and wellness within the SAPs does offer various courses to help people manage their finances. Within the South African context, SAPS officers are actually paid reasonably well. This is the problem with our society again. We are incredibly unequal. 50% of workers earn less than 3,500 Rand. So a constable starting out in the organization earns 4 times more than 50% of all workers in South Africa. So it's not simply a matter of income or danger pay. It's about the fact that constable is often having to support numerous unemployed people. It's the structure of South African society that drives this chronic stress. It's not simply within the organization. It's a holistic whole of society challenge.
All right. So, I mean, going forward now, I mean, what do you think needs to be done immediately? You've put a few suggestions there. The fact that it's really hard to get numbers, I think, suggests that, you know, it's a little bit underhand, isn't it? Do we need to just be more honest about it, be more open about it?
Yeah, look, we think that the employee assistance programs will play a greater part in ensuring that, obviously, police will always be, the nature of work of police will always be that they're exposed to such
I'm going to stop you there. Sorry, we've got a call on the line from Limpopo. Robert, go ahead.
Yes, that person here, that representative of the police welfare there, that is on the books. It's not practical. I've worked on 3 different stations, but we never saw those people around the station. If we've got the problem, because most of the problem is started with the management at the station level, because at the police department, you find that whatever the commander is saying is what he's saying. You will never comment on what the commander is saying, and whether you want to go somewhere to maybe you want a solution for that, you will never get a solution. You have to look at somewhere, and that is much of the depression comes from, because there you just got the commander who tells you what to do, whether it's right or wrong. We have to go on with that. That is one of the most problems we encounter in the system.
Okay, and I believe you got this from 3 stations that you worked in. Would you like to respond to that?
We do marketing on a constant basis through electronic media, print media, and our professionals also go to the stations and the clusters and the divisions to advertise our
I know, but hold on a sec. He said there were no therapists at all.
Maybe
available.
That was an isolated case.
Well,
but
he worked in 3 stations, so he's talking about 3 stations there.
I think that is really an isolated case, and also we are saying to the members that they do not have to depend on the commander to refer them. They can refer themselves as the employee without the commander knowing that they are seeking assistance from our professionals. The commander can also refer them. The unions also, we see that they are referring their members as well as their families, because our services, they extend to the employees' families, because we realize that the employees do not live in isolation.
Okay, and we're going to have to wrap it up there. Brigadier Petunia Lenona, Police Richard Mamabolo, Cassandra Govender, and Andrew Fall. Thank you very much. Born without a birth certificate, what happens to you? That story's up next.